What's up, witches? How we doing? Welcome, welcome. Hey, Linda, how are you? So good to have you back with us. Welcome, everyone. I'm gonna leave the graphic on the screen for a little bit for folks who might be joining us a little late. But welcome to the September 2023 session of the Coven Book Club. It is wonderful to see you guys here today. We are discussing Shades of Faith, Minority Voices in Paganism. This book is an anthology, so it's actually a collection of essays by different pagan authors, and it has been put together by Crystal Blanton, who is themselves a Wiccan high priestess. Very excited about talking about this book. First, because it's the first anthology that we've read this year. So it's the first book that we are looking at that is a collection of different authors with differing views on some similar topics. So this gives us an opportunity to explore different perspectives. Which is really cool. And then the author, Crystal, is going to be joining us in this meeting today. She should be popping in around 7:45 or so. And that's exciting. I've asked her to join us at that time to give us time to kind of have our opening announcements and everything like that, but also so that we can talk a little bit about the book candidly without her here, so we can really express exactly how we feel about the book. And then Crystal will be joining us, and that will be a great time to ask any questions that you might have about being Wiccan, about being a high priestess, about being a person of color, and all of those good things. So, why don't we go ahead and get into the opening announcements? Crystal, hi, how are you, my dear?
Hi, am I joining at the wrong time?
Yes, you're a little bit early. We were planning to have you at 7:45. It's 7:15 our time. But
Got
that's
it.
okay. I can move you to the waiting room if you don't mind and bring you back in when we have gotten through a little bit more of the meeting. Is that okay?
Oh, I'll just come back.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's so awesome. That's really cool. I'm glad to see that Crystal is ready for us. That's really awesome. And so we got a little sneak peek there. Hey, Crystal. So why don't we move on with the beginning of the meeting here, starting off with our intros. So if everyone could just share your name, where you are in the world, and your progress with the book. And I can get us started. My name is Allie, and I am located here in the Bronx, New York, and I am on page 53. So maybe about a third of the way through. All right, we'll move around alphabetically.
Hi guys, it's Betty here in Toronto, Canada, Haudenosaunee land, and I'm done the book. And it was a great book, and we'll dig right into it.
Woohoo, welcome. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cynthia. I'm in Texas, and I'm just here as support. And I want to hear what Crystal has to say because I did not read the book, but I will be listening to everything y'all have to say. I'm going to get the book at a later time.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here.
Hi, I'm Linda, and I am in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and that is Cherokee Nation. And I'm reading the book on my Kindle app, so it says I'm about 35% in. So I think I'm probably probably close to where you are, Allie, in the book. And I started a couple of days ago, and so far I'm really enjoying the perspective of the authors that I have read.
Thank you for being here. Welcome. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for introducing yourselves. In terms of announcements, I want to share with you a couple of book related things since you guys are my book witches. I am actually in two books that are coming out this month, which is really cool. One of them is called Witch. This book is by a publishing house called Common Sentience, and it is written by Reverend Valerie Love, who some of you may know from her work as the head of the Christian Witches. She's the author of How to Be a Christian Witch and about 19 or 20 other titles on Christianity and magic and witchcraft. She is a retreat leader, and she was also on 2 episodes of the Better Witch podcast, our very first episode ever, How to Be a Better Christian Witch. And we recently just recorded How to Be a Better Sentient Witch on my YouTube channel. So Reverend Valerie Love is really awesome, and I was really honored that she would ask me to submit for her latest book, basically asking the question of how did various witches in the community know that they were witches. So I got to share a story from my life recently that really kind of was a defining moment for me and for my mom, who is just coming to, the terminology of being able to say my daughter is a witch. So I talk about that story, and that book is coming out in October. And then there is another book by Ivo Dominguez Jr. and Kobe Michael called Leo Witch, which is in a series of books on how to harness your zodiac sign for your power as a practitioner. And I am a Leo witch, so I was asked to contribute to that book along with some other witches that I admire very much, like the one and only Lady Rhea. So I'm really excited to be in that. So keep an eye out. We will have copies of both of those books. Thank you. We will have copies of both of those books at the shop if you're interested in grabbing a copy. But both of them are also available on Amazon and pretty much anywhere else where you can get books. And I am hosting my first ever witchy retreat, which I'm super excited about, called the BronxWitch Staycation. It is happening Halloween weekend, October 27th through the 29th, during the full moon. And it is just so dope. It's an all-inclusive 3-day, 2-night retreat being led by myself and the other shop witches that work at HQ. We're going to be offering rituals and workshops. All of your meals are included. Everyone's getting a really amazing goodie bag when they arrive. And we're going to just do it up. The house is 100% haunted. I'm sure of it. It's a super old house. But we're also going to be taking a haunted tour of City Island on Friday night, a 5-hour hike through the woods. We're going to be treated to sound bowl sessions every night before bed and yoga every morning. We're going to have our meals prepared for us, and we're going to have a spiritual bath as our closing ritual all together. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be so much fun. Whether you live in New York or would like to travel to New York, all of the travel information will be provided to those who register. So please do let your friends know, post about it on your page, spread the word. We have room for 20 witches in this house, and I would say about half the spots have been taken up. So definitely let people know that the deadline to apply is on Wednesday, September 27th. So that's in 2 days is the deadline to apply and join us. So I appreciate you guys sharing the details with everybody. And our
How much is
website,
it?
BronxWitch.com.
How much is it, Allie? How
So
much
it
is it?
depends on whether or not you choose a single bed or if you are down to share a bed with a friend or with another witch. If you would like to request a single bed, it is $1,300, and that includes everything. You probably have never seen a 3-day all-inclusive retreat for that price. That's the beauty of staying local. And then if you would like to save some money and would like to share a bed with maybe a friend who's coming or with another one of the witches who is down to share a bed, then you can save $200, and it's just $1,100 for folks who are sharing beds. So Really, really reasonable rate because the house is run by a nonprofit. So that gives us some wiggle room on what we pay them. So we just pass that savings on to you guys. So that's meals, transportation, all the workshops, tarot readings, your goodie bag, everything, all included in that price. So we gotcha. And then all the other information that you might have, more information about the price, deadlines, deposits, all of that, you can get that on our website, bronxwitch.com/retreats. So on the retreat page is all the information, pictures of the space, information about the workshops, all that good stuff. So definitely check it out. All right. So those are all of my announcements. So I think we'll go ahead and get into the discussion of the book so we can start chatting before.
I have a little announcement. I am now a grandma.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yay! Congratulations! Woo, woo,
Would you
woo,
like to see a
woo.
picture of my granddaughter?
Yes, of course. Yes. How
She's a
sweet.
cutie patootie. Let's see, I'll try to find one.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Allie. I'm officially in my crone era now. I'm grandma,
Yep.
you know, I'm there.
Yep.
I was there before, but like this is now, you know, really there.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
trying to
official
find a
now.
still.
Oh, I
'Cause-
like the reaction, Cynthia. I didn't know the Zoom reactions move now. That's cool. Let me see if I can do one.
Let's see. Oh,
Yay!
I gotta take you. Hold on. It's hard. Can you see her?
Oh, yeah, it's just showing her face. Oh, hello, precious.
Her name is Cecilia Jean.
Oh, she is precious.
Future witch, but they don't know it yet.
They don't know it yet. That's super cute. Thank you for sharing that with us. Welcome, Cecilia Jean, the
Yes,
newest witch
thank
in the
you.
coven. That's really sweet. I love that. So yeah, so let's hop in to chatting a little bit about the book before Crystal comes back with us, because now is definitely a good time to share anything you don't like before Crystal is back with us, right? I wanted to start off by asking how folks felt that this book compared or contrasted to some of the other books that we've read, because all of the other books we've read have just had one author. So, what was it like to read a book that has multiple voices? I thought we would start there.
I can start. I felt that the book was very organic. Now, I don't know why, Allie, this was the smallest book that we've done in a couple of years. It took me the longest time to get really cracking into it. But once I did, I really enjoyed it. I liked the organicness of it because, you know, you'd have the energy of one person telling their path to that place. And then you go on to hear someone else's and throughout the different writers or authors, they had similarities. You know, like there were things that you could relate to in each of them. That was like, okay, that may like, especially from my perspective, that's where I felt where I enjoyed the book because I felt it was very organic and it had a different flavor with each writer. So it kept my interest going for sure. There was a lot of info in it. But yeah, I did like that part of it.
I really enjoyed the different voices in the book, and what they had to say. And being a witch of color, it was like they were speaking my language, you know. And I so related with the different authors and how they felt about certain things. And it was just nice to hear. It's great to hear an author and her perspective, but it was really something to hear multiple people's perspective. It was just something very special about that.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that I found really interesting, or maybe like the most edifying as a person of color myself was hearing, at least so far with those that I have read, the kind of differing views on like whether or not there is a responsibility or a role for witches of color in like the pagan community at large. And so I felt like some of the authors were like, yeah, you know, it's really important that we be in these spaces and it helps to increase diversity and it helps to educate people. And then some of the authors were like, I don't think that's our responsibility. I don't really think that it's, you know, the responsibility of witches of colors to like educate white witches or to, you know, make these spaces more diverse. And, you know, therefore I prefer to stay in my own spaces or stay in spaces that are mostly also witches of color or pagans that are of color. And so that was interesting to hear folks have differing views on, you know, whether or not there is like a greater role, I guess, or like a greater responsibility for people of color within the pagan community. And I thought that was interesting to hear just the different perspectives and that like not everybody agreed that people of color should like have to bear the responsibility of making pagan spaces more diverse. That maybe other people should take on that responsibility and, you know, put the effort into making spaces more diverse rather than just like letting it kind of accidentally happen or only doing it in response to like the demands of people of color saying make your spaces more diverse or things like that. So I thought that was just interesting that there were so many different views just on that one topic.
I know I hopped in late, but it sounds like you all were just giving your general opinions on the book. I will say that I really enjoyed this as well. This was a really good read, minus like one article. But what stood out to me was the conversation about eclecticism and how, in essence, as African Americans, we've been practicing eclecticism in our craft since we came over here. And that really, like I said, struck a chord. And like this journey of finding out who I am in the craft, knowing that eclecticism is really an option. And it's not coming from a space of, oh, I'm taking it here, I'm taking it there, and it's cultural appropriation. Because eclecticism, to me, the way that it's been explained on the internet, the interwebs, it seems very cultural appropriating. So just hearing that gave some really good, solid affirmation as far as how I choose to practice. So again, I really enjoyed reading this, minus like one article. If y'all haven't gotten the things that they could have done better in the book.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to hear what which article didn't really resonate with you.
Hold down. No, that was a great one. Let me find it. Because it was in the middle of like some really good ones. And I was just like, okay. And I tried to, I guess, write it off. Maybe I was like in a bad mood or something, or maybe I just wasn't like paying attention, but also I don't think I liked it very much. And it's stepping out on faith. And it's because one, I found the writing style in and of itself confusing. I feel like I understood kind of what she was trying to get at. Like, as far as her spiritual journey is concerned, all of the major points that she pointed out were endings and beginnings in and of themselves. It was just how it was written to me was utterly confusion. It was chaos. And that was something that I didn't like about the particular writing style. But other than that, the rest of them were great. That was just the one that I didn't really resonate with so much because it was too confusing. I didn't know where we're going, how are we going to get there, things like that.
Betty, I know that you read all of the book. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the Stepping Out on Faith article. How did you feel about that one? Oh, wait, you're muted. I don't know if you're talking.
Sorry, yeah, that was earlier on in the month. So I'm just trying to give a glance at what it was about, stepping out on faith. Well, I mean, it's kind of been my path, so I did relate to it in a sense. A lot of the parts of this book really affected me because I could relate to some of them. Even though I have a fairer skin, I have walked some paths that haven't been very comfortable. So I have always stepped out on faith. So this, I mean, I don't know about the writing style because I'd have to refresh my memory on the chapter because it was a while ago. Yeah, it was a while ago. So I really can't answer it fairly to say if I disagreed or not, because I can't remember exactly what the chapter was about because I've, been moving on to the farther part of the book. What?
While you're looking for that, Betty, I'll jump in.
Please do.
There was the specifics of like she believed and then she didn't believe, and then no, this is the beginning, and no, this was really the beginning. And I really get that she was probably trying to say there is no such thing as an ending and beginning when it comes to your spiritual faith. But also, I am confusion because you're starting and stopping in too many points. I am confusion.
Mom, can I try? Mom, can I try?
What do you want to try, Zion?
To say?
What do you want to say?
Like a horse?
Okay, you said it. Can you go play now, please?
Mm-hmm.
Say hello.
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 Make it. Hey, get you to build like a horse.
Okay, bye-bye. Go play. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Well, because in stepping out, I think the author of this particular chapter, she had multiple cultures in her, right? She had some Celtic and she had some African American, like she had everything in her. And, she's getting all this information coming at her at once. And a lot of the authors do kind of participate in that kind of a lot of religious things thrown at them through their childhood. But, I'm just, like I said, I don't remember the chapter completely, but from what I can remember, she was going back and forth because she was learning something this way and then she was learning something this way. So where is the beginning, right? Where's the beginning? Because with me, I was forced into my beginning, which I think a lot of Christianity, when we're young children, we are. But, a few years ago, I really took a big leap and I stepped out on faith and wanting to do what was right for me. And it's not, I've got people in my life that are serious Christians that question me regularly. When am I coming back to the faith? And I can recite scripture to them, but they're like, when are you coming back? And I'm like, this is where I'm comfortable. Like, this is me. This is my path now. So I kind of relate to the chapter in that sense. But the stop and go, I really would have to dig deeper into the chapter to kind of get what you were saying, Janet, because I don't remember it honestly, but I kind of relate to this in a sense. We all do step out in faith at some point on something.
Yeah. I think for the parts that I had read up until now, the parts that I have gotten to, that was something that I was finding was like a common thread between folks, was this sort of like, not a lostness, but like the sense that like pagans of all walks of life, I think it's most highlighted probably as pagans of color, but I'm glad that you're sharing your perspective on it, Betty, because I think really it's something that all pagans have to go through, which is that like 99% of us don't grow up in households that are already pagan households. And so, regardless of where you're from or what your ethnic background is, you have to kind of go on a similar journey of like discovery and reclaiming and finding where you belong. And I would say that so far, that is something that I feel like all the authors have in common. And I think that's because it's something that all of us have in common, which is that we all have to find where we belong. We don't have the luxury of being kind of, born into this lifestyle, which means that we all have to search for what area or areas of pagan life really resonate with us and call to us. So that was
And
kind
that's
of cool to see these different journeys.
something similar to that effect. Like, Saturday, I went to a pagan festival. We were all in a wonderful space, and a Bible thumper like you've had at the festival in New York was with this loudspeaker going around. He had a camera on him because he wanted people to come up to him and approach him. But it's like, we're not bothering you. We're not going to where you practice your faith. Like, even calling out Hecate, like he knew about stuff. I was like, so at one point, someone got smart and turned on the car alarms, and we drowned him out, and it felt better.
I love that.
I also think the longer you are in this, you go through, different phases. Like when I first started out, and I still do a lot more hoodoo now. It's more, my practice has kind of switched and turned over the years as I maybe developed or learned more or experienced more, which is all equals eclecticism. But I think that you go through different phases of your practice. And that's another, being a witch of color. I think it doesn't even have to be a color. We all go through different levels of understanding and different places and different phases as we mature and change in our craft. And then, coming out and all of that, and then accepting yourself, and then thinking maybe what I did in the beginning isn't working for me now. I have to change. So I think when you add that all up together, not that I've read that chapter, it almost is chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I actually I like Nisi that you picked up on chaos in that essay because it is very chaotic. I think like for most of us, like when I think about my journey, starting at 12 and having to piece so much together for myself and find, spaces where I felt comfortable, find teachers that I resonated with. None of it was very linear. None of it was like handed to me, and no book or anything ever fully captured my experience and could tell me exactly what I needed to do. So I had to figure out a lot of things on my own, and it has felt chaotic a lot of the time. So, that sort of start and stop that you're talking about in that essay, I haven't gotten to that one just yet, but it might be that that sense of chaos is reflective of like how that author really feels, trying to be a pagan and be a witch and figure out on top of that also being a witch of color, like what does that mean? And just
Exactly.
glancing
Yeah.
at just glancing at that essay, having people ask you questions like, do you believe in God? Do you still think murder is bad? Do you have like so many misconceptions about what it is you are interested in. So like all of these things add these extra layers of, yeah, it's kind of chaotic, I think, the process of going on a spiritual or magical journey. There's no like guidebook on exactly how to do it, and everybody is different. So even if there were a guidebook, it wouldn't be relevant to everybody. And so maybe that that chaos is kind of reflected in the writing style a little bit, where this author is maybe still kind of searching.
Well, and again, I parallel myself because Allie, you kind of know where I started, and I have taken a lot of mentorship from you just virtually here. And, you have encouraged me to do things, which I have done, find my people, right? So going to the festivals, I've been going to the Indigenous Center. I've been going there for beading classes to get in touch with my Indigenous side and getting out of the house. And that's chaos for me. Like just going to have a bus and coming home when it's dark. I don't do those things. I've been very, the virus kind of stuck inside, and I can feel that chaos, but at the end of the day it really feels good because I've connected. I'm talking to some of my people. I've gone to the festival. I'm talking to some more of my people, and it's bringing me joy and happiness. But getting to those places is all chaos, like the logistics, and I got to take the bus, and because I don't go out much. So I think there's going to be a bit of chaos on the path, on the path.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and everybody kind of has that. You'll see it throughout the rest of the chapters where, the path of how to get there. Some a little more chaos than others, but
Yeah, like I said, I see that, and I agree with everything that you and Allie are saying. It probably was just I was just in a mood and just reading it, just feeling the visceralness of that chaos made me quite uncomfortable. Like I've had experiences similar to you two, as far as it feeling chaotic, and I guess just sitting in it and reading it in her words was just like, no.
Yeah, because I think we're probably used to, the authors kind of having it all together, that we read because we look to them for some guidance. But in some ways, I think this is kind of like maybe a little bit refreshing. I was talking to Olivia Graves, the Witch of Wonderlust, about this in our when she was on the Better Witch podcast, and I don't remember if it made it to the episode, if this was like behind the scenes conversation, but we were sort of talking about the pressure to write and how why a lot of us haven't yet is because of this idea that we need to be like experts and we really need to have everything together and like have our shit together and not still be figuring things out. So in some ways, it's a little bit refreshing to have an author maybe not have it all figured out and be like, this is just kind of like what I'm going through right now or what I have gone through up until this moment. And it's been a lot of like randomness. It's been a lot of like random moments. It's been a lot of like having this experience and thinking that I figured something out, but then realizing that I didn't, and then having another experience. So it could be that part of the like discomfort of that type of a writing style is partially rooted in like our expectation that our authors not be chaotic, that they be figured out, and that they kind of have like a very linear sort of how to approach to telling their story, like these are the steps I took and this is what you can do to get there too. And it sounds like this author may have decided to not go that route and kind of just tell the story of their own progress, which has been maybe not very buttoned up, and kind of a little all over the place, which is like, it's I'm not passing judgment on it as like good or bad, it's just kind of like a different approach, and it might work for some readers and might not work for other readers. I feel like I can enjoy reading somebody's story that is very real and maybe a little bit disorganized, but not necessarily if I'm coming to it from a place of like, I want to learn from this person, because then that would probably make me feel just like my education's not really being furthered. Like it's like, oh, you're sharing this story with me about your life, okay, that's fine. But if I came to you expecting to learn something, I would be very disappointed by that, because I'd be like, well, you know I don't know if this is helpful, but who knows? I like part of the Better Witch podcast's, whole motto is learning from hearing about other people's like chaotic stories. So for some people, it might actually be very educational, but I could see what Nisi's talking about. For me, it would be kind of disappointing if I'm expecting to sort of like gather something that I can use for myself. And it's not quite as clear from her essay, like what I'm supposed to take away from that.
I just had to go to that essay and I've read a few, like maybe 2 or 3 pages, and I get what you're saying because she is just with those 3 pages kind of all over the place. But what I see the string is that she's really saying, I don't remember the beginning. Like the beginning may have been this when I went to church, or the beginning might have been this at another place in the story. Now I've only read 3 pages, but I can really see, because it does seem like she's all in those 3 pages. Like I've gone to 3 different areas, but I feel like the string that is occurring there is that she is saying, kind of like I would say, I remembered who I am, but I don't remember the very beginning, because as I look over my childhood and as I look over my life, there were many beginnings. And that's what I'm getting from just the 3 pages that I read. Not that that's good or bad. It, for her, I get it, but you know, that could be for readers, like you're all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Miss Linda.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That's really good insight into that perspective. And woohoo, it looks like Crystal is back with us. Perfect timing.
Hello,
Yes. Hello,
everyone.
Crystal. How are you? Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Hi,
Yes, I
Crystal.
can.
Hi,
Welcome.
everyone.
Welcome, everyone saying hi. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we have a better view here, and welcome you so much into our space. This is the September meeting of the BronxWitch Online Portals Book Club. This is a monthly book club that I facilitate, and we've been going for about 2 years now, which is incredible.
Nice.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have you with us. We are live streaming onto our YouTube channel as well. So this will be available as a replay for folks who are not tuning into the Zoom, but the Zoom members are our monthly coven members. So these are our committed witches, and it's so wonderful to have them here. And for everyone who is wondering or watching on the replay, we now have with us in the room Crystal Blanton, who is the editor of this month's book, Shades of Faith, Minority Voices in Paganism. Crystal has put together this collection of essays and stories from witches of color who are pagans, who identify with paganism in some way or other. They come from all different backgrounds and different traditions. And Crystal herself is a Wiccan high priestess, which is very exciting, as many of us either got our starts in magic through Wicca or have some interest in Wicca. And we have talked quite a bit about, looking for faces that look like our own in Wiccan spaces, more diverse spaces, faces in those spaces, and diverse voices. And so the book club is a diverse group of people. So we're really excited to have you, because your book is all about diversity and getting different perspectives on the pagan way of life. So welcome, Crystal. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes,
Nice
thank
to
you.
meet
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Yes. So we were just talking about the book. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to chat a little bit about the book before you joined us, so that folks could be free and open and honest to share their thoughts. And people have been sharing things that they've enjoyed, some criticisms that they have of some of the essays and things like that. So I'll invite folks to share some of those thoughts with you as we progress with the meeting. But I wanted to start off off with just asking you to tell us a little bit about your journey in paganism, how it began for you, and what motivated you to put this particular book together for us.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not exactly sure how I fell into kind of like a formal path. I've always been kind of one of those people, right? Like I'm sure we all can connect to that, right? And then I kind of found my way into a coven, and started kind of formally studying. And I did go through, kind of like the whole Wiccan initiatory path. And as we all know, they're very, very white spaces, but, kind of acclimating to just that, just being in white space and doing that. But I don't know, like there was always this piece that I struggled with of feeling like parts of who I was kind of like, put on the back burner in order to show up in these spaces. So that's an interesting thing. And I was kind of going through that process. And I had written another book, and my acquisitions editor came up to me at PantheaCon years ago and said, it was really funny because it's kind of like, a lot of people don't know how or, to start the conversation, right? So he comes up to me and says, "Hey, Crystal, you're Wiccan and you're Black." And I was like, "I am." And so then he went on to tell me this idea of like, and I was like, oh, and, there was part of me that, of course, had that same struggle. So I was interested, and I kind of took the project on and started reaching out to people that I knew, kind of in local pagan communities, and then was able to meet people from all over who were also people of color, Black, Latina, Latino, like all mixes of people, and try and get people to write for it, which was really, really interesting because I don't know that most people felt there was a space to tell that part of their story. So it was a real interesting process, I guess, for me to be the one saying like, we really would love to hear like your experience in this. So yeah, that's kind of like how it started, from just me being in the community and me being, kind of doing my own thing, to having this kind of idea be brought forward, and then, kind of taking it on and working with it. And so I no longer identify as Wiccan. I do identify as pagan. But I think like a lot of us, we come into the path and we go, to what's accessible to us. And that was what was accessible to me. And it did resonate. And I did go through all those things. But again, like there was just such a huge part of me that wasn't welcome in the spaces in which I was in. And so since that time, and since the time of writing that book, or the parts of the book, my own path has continued to evolve. And I imagine that I haven't gone back and read what I wrote at that time in some while, but I imagine that I would probably go back and read it and go, oh, right? Like that's, it's me, but it's different than how I show up today in spaces.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, because I think for all of us, sometimes it can feel like we were kind of just talking about this, where we oftentimes look to authors to have it all figured out already, and to be able to guide us from a place of like, well, I've got it all together, so now I can teach you. And in reality, the authors that we might turn to for guidance or education are themselves evolving and learning. And one word that we were kind of using a lot to talk about some of the essays was chaotic, that some of the stories are a little bit, there's a chaos that we feel from either that's portrayed in the writing style or just in the story itself of the journey that that person has gone through. And someone made the point, I think Linda might have made the point, that that chaos might be coming through, because it is chaotic to go on this journey, because most of us are not born in pagan households. And most of us don't have access to an elder or a coven even, to turn to kind of give us like a very systematic way of approaching these things. And so most of us have to kind of try on a lot of different hats, until we find the one that fits, you know.
Yeah.
And that journey can kind of be, it can feel chaotic. I know it has for me a lot of times, and even now where I feel like, you know, this journey for me is 25 plus years long. I feel really confident and comfortable identifying as a Wiccan, sharing what I have come to know about African American folk magic and how that shows up in my life and all of those things. And yet at the same time, I hit these moments in my path where all of a sudden I feel like spirit's throwing like five different things at me. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to learn voodoo? And like, wait, and I'm also supposed to learn about this spirit? And wait, and also I need this kind of an altar now? Like, what is going on? And that's now, you know, after very many years. So chaos, I think, is something that all pagans have to go through, just because of how infrequently it is that we find ourselves in pagan spaces to start off. We really have to like kind of piece it together for ourselves.
Mhm. Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. And I mean, it's part of my own evolution, was that like what was working stopped feeling as natural as these things were kind of being thrown at me, as you know, my ancestors were showing up in a different way, as who I thought was Carrigan wasn't really Carrigan, and it was Yemeya, and I was like, oh, what are you doing here, who are you, right? Like all of these things started kind of coming forward in a way that I could no longer hold it just inside of the container of Wicca. And inside of the kind of container of Wicca, as we all know, there's not necessarily a lot of flexibility for kind of a cultured experience. So that kind of brought me to a different kind of crossroads of how I'm showing up and who I'm bringing with me into the circle, or who I'm bringing with me into the space. And so I had some, you know, I think because of that, you know, that in that chaotic energy of like, yo, what the is happening, right? And then we have to like, you know, right size ourselves to something that feels a little more authentic. And it didn't mean that, you know, like the practice I was, you know, trained in was no longer a good one. It just meant that there was this other piece of me that was knocking at the door, that now it wasn't an option for me not to find space for it, right? It was like, we're here and you got to figure this out. So yes to all of that. And I think it is really chaotic. And I think the additional piece of kind of like the construction of Wicca being very Eurocentric, kind of, you know, like it brings even a different level of chaos for people of color who are trying to, you know, kind of layer in their authentic self and their own ancestors and their own stuff inside of a framework that really doesn't reflect any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, you know, one thing that I had quoted on like my Instagram page to like get the discussion going with people, was a quote, and I'll try to find it, but I might not be able to. Um, but it was about the responsibility of people of color, but I want to open it up more generally to just kind of all of us. In these spaces to like educate others. And something that I feel like I have noticed as a person of color tuning themselves into other witches of color is that I do sort of feel like there's two kind of camps on this. And there are witches of color who feel like it's important that there be diversity in pagan spaces, and that it be important that we you know, make the effort to be inclusive and that our spaces be diverse. And then I also see witches of color who are like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm maybe kind of tired of feeling like I have to teach people what it means to be a person of color or how to be more inclusive in these spaces. And so I would just rather only be in spaces that are also people of color.
Right.
Um, and I've had my own struggles kind of with that. I remember being in high school and joining like the high school like people of color group, and really feeling like I didn't like the idea of being like the brown table in the cafeteria. I
Mm,
felt like it wasn't giving me what I wanted, because what I wanted in my life was not a world of just all Black people. I wanted a diverse world. And I
mm,
realized that by joining that group, their mission wasn't so much to diversify the school at large as much as it was to find just like a safe space for themselves, which is totally fine and valid. And I completely understand it. But it wasn't what I wanted for myself. And so when I went to college, I made the decision not to join the on campus group. I think it was called Umoja. And oh, child. I got a lot of backlash from the Black kids on campus for not joining that group and for having a diverse friend group that had quite a lot of white folks in it, but also Asian kids and Eastern European kids. And we were just a mix. And I liked that better. That for me was what I felt was satisfying to my soul. And then I've kind of gone away from that, and I have found like harm in those spaces, and so that has caused me to seek out spaces that are all people of color, and motivated me to start the Witches of Color support group, which is
mm.
another group that I facilitate in our online portal that is just for BIPOC witches, to kind of have that sort of safe space. So I feel myself like going back and forth, and I'm curious about your thoughts as not only a practitioner, but you went all the way up to the level of high priestess, in your journey through Wicca. And so you were in a leadership role, of other witches, and so I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are about, the benefit or the disadvantage of groups that are ethnic specific or even race specific, within the pagan community. Do those groups hurt or help, do you think?
Yeah, I would say I definitely don't think they hurt. I wouldn't necessarily think that, but I would also say that that there's space for both. Like I very much believe in the both and. Um, and I feel like you can get and do get something different from having access to both spaces, as a witch of color. And so I think it's important that they exist. I know, like out here, I don't know if everybody's aware of what PantheaCon used to be.
Hmm.
But it was, yeah, huge pagan convention, largest indoor pagan convention, and ran 20 something years. And so 2020, I think, was its last year. And so I was heavily involved in that. And, we started the Pagans of Color Suite. When I say we, I mean the community did. I was not a founding member of that suite, but I definitely supported it. And it became like a safer space for us to go and be and show up, as we were, and to have that support of other people of color there, while also having options of being able to, connect and go and be around any group of people, to go into any circle, to go into any workshop, right? And so it was kind of, to my knowledge, like the first of its kind in the kind of like on that level, like the stage of paganism type thing, the conventions and whatnot. And now there's a couple of different ones. I know there's one, I think, at Paganicon now and in a couple of different places. But, being able to carve out space just for witches of color who need that space, I think is really important. And I don't see it as exclusionary of other things. I think that's why it's important that there's like the both and, right? Because we get something different. And there's something about being able to be around others where you don't have to code switch. You don't have to, like, everybody knows the culture language. You don't have to explain. You don't have to do all of that, and still be able to be a part of greater community and learn from different people and different types of people. I think there was a lot of controversy that came out around it, because, you know, the pagan community at large just was really struggling to understand why witches of color needed their own spaces.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of backlash, you know, but I think, you know, what I took away from that was, thank goodness we had it. And thank goodness we have that we can have spaces where I don't have to worry about, you know, whoever may or may not understand the culture that I bring with me.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we talked with, I have a podcast, which I will totally email you about because I would love to have you on as a guest co-host, so we can, you know, take this conversation even further. But we recently met with Yvonne Abero, who is the author of Dark Mirror and a book on inclusive Wicca. And, you know, we were sort of talking about the difference between welcoming people and being inclusive, and
Mm.
how there, you know, is a difference. And being welcoming to others is like the bare minimum, but like actually being inclusive is really huge. And I feel like one of the best ways um, to be inclusive is to offer things like that, where you have POC only spaces or BIPOC support groups within the thing that you are doing. Because I think that one of the most important things that European pagans or white pagans can understand is that there are things that they will not ever understand about being a person of color in pagan spaces. And rather than trying to force themselves to understand it, to just accept that they'll never have that experience. And so all the best thing that they can do is hold space for people of color to do whatever it is that they need to do. And if the response from the people of color is we need to be by ourselves in order to foster healing, or to really feel like we have a space here where we can be truly comfortable, then that should be heard. And so I'm glad to hear that these conventions, despite maybe getting some backlash, ultimately decided we are going to listen to the people of color who are saying that they want something that is POC exclusive, and that even if we don't understand why they need this space just to themselves, we are going to make sure that it happens. And I'm glad that happened, because it didn't have to. So I'm glad that somebody was like, look, we don't know why they want to meet by themselves, but we're not supposed to. And let's just make sure that we give them what they're asking for. So I think that's really awesome that the organizers did that.
Yeah, I mean, they allowed, wrong language. They supported what the community was bringing, and then the POC community held it. They paid for it, they held it, they staffed it, right? But I think, you know, there's a beauty behind the fact that it happened there, like on the like the large conference kind of thing, and it was really, really hard and stressful. You know, PantheaCon, I mean, at its height, I think had about 3,000 attendees, and you know, like the intensity that it brought really kind of mirrored how hard it is sometimes to be in pagan spaces as a witch of color. And, you know, that piece, that burnout piece, or that piece of like, I can't explain to one more person, like not one more time Am I going to talk about why this is important? That really became like a real thing, and ultimately led to some of the conference not being sustainable anymore. It wasn't sustainable financially, like people wanting to come, but there was so much culture kind of conflict around the needs of the community that it was hard for some of the organizers or the people, the stakeholders, to manage. And I think that's unfortunate, but I think it's like, it is exactly what you're talking about, where, you know, how do witches of color get seen, and what they say they need is understood instead of being pushed back on, or instead of feeling like they have to fight the social justice fight in their spiritual community and can't just show up and be a part of the community and also have what they need. And I think that that's still the issue. Like, I think that's always going to be the issue for us, right? And I think that's, you know, some of what we were thinking about in doing the essays in the book, right? And I don't think, I'll speak for myself, I don't know that my thinking had evolved enough at that time. If I were to go back and write something now, like, it's been 10 plus years, and I'm like, yo, right? Like, there's even more kind of like expansiveness around the challenge, that, you know, the dual piece that we have to hold as witches of color inside of a largely white structured system. But that's, you know, we were hoping to bring some of that out by using, you know, people using their experiences. So
Yeah. And I think it's like, it's even more layered than that, because something that we've talked about here in book club, but also for folks from book club that participate in the Witches of Color support group, is kind of the double layer of teacher role that you get, because when you're a person of color in pagan spaces, they're often very white spaces, and so you have to teach people about that, about your cultural backgrounds and things like that. But then when you're around your family, your friends who might be people of color, then you have to teach them about paganism,
right,
because they're totally lost on that. I had someone in my comments on YouTube, this was a while ago now, but I assume a Black person from their profile picture and their comment, and they were like, you know, something about, you know, paganism and this European idea, da 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 da. And I was like, okay, so let's start off with paganism exists everywhere, is not European, okay? That's not the case, you know? And I had other folks jump into the comments and help me out, but it was like, man, it can be kind of exhausting to have to educate the pagan spaces that you're in, and also educate like your friends and family. Either way, you're constantly having to like teach people, you know, just about the parts of you that make you you. And so I can understand why some folks maybe sometimes choose to just be like, I'm just gonna isolate and be by myself. I can understand why there are so many solitary witches, because even in pagan spaces, you have to like be the teacher,
right,
oftentimes. And so that can be really exhausting. And sometimes it's easier to kind of be like on your own.
Yeah.
In some ways. I know that you have gotten the experience of being in a coven and, like I said before, rising through the coven ranks up to high priestess. That's an experience that many of us haven't had. So would you share with us a little bit about what coven life was like for you? And, you know, because most of us, I think, in here are solitaries right now, or if we've initiated into groups, we're not very active in them currently. And so what were some of the benefits maybe, or perhaps downsides, if there were any, about being in a coven and practicing with other witches?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest benefits is having community, right? Like, in that sense of connection, that goes beyond like just casual connection. Like, it's a really intimate spiritual connection that you have with people inside of the coven. And that like you're speaking the same language, right? And you know, even when you're around many different types of witches, like, you know, you ask one question and there's like 4,000 different responses to it, right? In our communities. And in a coven, you are kind of holding on to the same thread, right? So I think that's one of the really big benefits. You know, this is good and also challenging, that sometimes it kind of mirrors the experience of being in a family. Right. And so like a lot of the family roles and that kind of stuff, it can be really affirming and supportive, and it can also turn toxic at times. So, you know, it's a, you know, but in the bestest parts of being a part of a coven or covens, I would say that having that supportive family feel has often been really, really great. And what I was seeking at that time, because we know, like, you know, sometimes being on this path can feel like a lonely path because we are, you know, just left of the societal kind of, you know, expectation or norm, and we can't just like walk up to somebody and have a conversation about it all the time. So I felt like I needed that community, and that was really powerful. I think some of the challenge, well, oh, also, and of course, the learning. Like there's a lot of learning that you can do in that setting because you have people that, you know, share energy with and study together and learn together, right? Like that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
I think the challenges are the fact that sometimes it mimics a family feel, right? So, you know, like, I don't know why you talking to me like that because you're not my mama. You know, like that kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And you know, with that, sometimes depending on the structure of the coven, like that hierarchical kind of thing and certain traditions being really kind of steeped in hierarchy, and that can be a challenge. Sometimes it's great, you don't have to make all the decisions, but it can be a challenge. And I would say probably another thing that comes up for me as far as like, you know, navigating the potential challenge would be like, you know, the boundaries that kind of happen in that world, right? I mean, from the most chaotic to just the simple boundaries, but you know, like the expectations, the commitment that you have to the group, the way that you have to kind of schedule out your life, the responsibility you're expected to take on or to carry. If you are, you know, doing solstice and you're facilitating, you know, this role in the solstice ritual, there's no room for you not to be there. Like your car breakdown, you better find a way. Like, right, like, so you're taking on a whole nother really important role in a part of a coven. And it impacts everybody when you're not able to do that. I would say that that's probably one of the bigger challenges, because, you know, some of us have room in our life to navigate that differently and some don't. You know, you have kids, you have an intense job, you have a, like right now, like I don't think I could be a part of a coven with my, you know, the way that my career is right now. Right. And so I just, you know, I can't drop everything at a dime and do this thing the way that I could 10 years ago. So I think that's some of the challenges.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, because that's really insightful and like helpful for those of us who might be considering it, or as we go further along in our walks and maybe attend conventions or go to festivals and fairs, we might be approached by coven members, or we might interact with coven members, and it's really good to hear from someone who has had that experience firsthand, share some insight on some of the you know, pros and cons, or the ups and downs of being in that. I think the biggest thing I took away from what you said is the family aspect. Because like I think about my family and I'm like, I love my family. And also sometimes I'm like, oh my God, my family.
Right.
So
Right.
knowing that the coven experience is very similar, you're going to have people that you love and interactions with them that nobody else is going to ever understand, because you're going to be doing things with your coven members that you don't do with your other friends or with other people. But you might have like an annoying little sister in the coven, or something like that going on, plus responsibilities,
Right. Right.
which is big.
Absolutely. And potential for drama. Just gonna
Yes.
name that drama.
Yes. Yes, as always.
Mhm,
Always drama.
mhm.
I want to open the floor to our book club members to ask questions or share some thoughts. So first of all, if folks have any thoughts on the book that you didn't get a chance to share so far, or that you would like to share now that Crystal is with us, I want to open us up to that. And hopefully, Crystal, if it's okay, folks might also have some questions, if you don't mind fielding a few questions from folks. So
Of course.
you don't have to wait from me. I will let people unmute themselves when they're ready to talk.
It's me. I'm always going to have my 2 cents fair. First of all, I want to say thank you for the book, because it was great for me, and I'm still reading, and I'll be honest about that. But to hear different people's experiences, and yet feel like, oh, I felt that way as you're reading the book. And I'm glad it's different people with different experiences. And then my question or thought would be, as I've been in this path for a little while, at some points, we talk about moving in European type spaces, but what about the spaces where there's always this, oh, you practice that? You don't practice this? Or you practice hoodoo, don't you want to be initiated into? We don't often talk about that, but that, if you've been doing this for a while, that becomes another part of, like, you feel this, should I initiate? I really don't feel that. I feel closer to this, which may not even be what most others like being Wiccan or whatever. It's always not even a 2-fold pressure, but really a 3-fold pressure. Can you give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great, I mean, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because that's real, like for real. I think there was a lot of times, like, especially as kind of some of my ancestral stuff and, Yemeya started talking, it was like there was the pressure to, like, are you going to initiate in an ATR? Like, are you gonna do that? And I was like, well, first of all, I literally don't have one piece of white clothing in my closet. So that seems so shallow, but I was like, I can't wear white every day for 4 years of that, right? Like, and so that was one piece.
The fashion restrictions of this
Yes.
tradition don't work for me.
I just cannot. But also, I wasn't completely, I didn't feel like that was 100% my path, right? Like, I felt like I was somewhere in between worlds. And so I wasn't at the place and to feel like I needed to initiate there. But there was also that kind of, like you said, pressure, and also this kind of thing, like, can you talk about that, Orisha, because you're not initiated, right? And so, like, trying to be respectful of culture and traditions, but then also, like, being like, I'm kind of in the middle here. Like, I don't really know what to do with it. Like, I didn't even ask for this, right? So yeah, I think that there is that pressure. I think there is that pressure, not just within the non-POC community, but also within the Black community of paganism. Like, oh, so are you ready to, right? And so I think that's hard to navigate. I mean, I know that I've had challenges navigating it until I got to the point where I was like, yeah, no, I just can't. And I feel like because I had relationships with a lot of people out in my local community, like they were fine with that. But when you move in and out of spaces, I feel like, yeah, that's a part of it, navigating that. And I think it's hard. And I think it's something that we as witches of color have to hold that a lot of others in the community don't even have to consider, right? Nobody's like, oh, so you're going to be a Celtic Reconstructionist instead of doing Asteroid. Like, nobody's like, you know what I'm saying? There's no pressure in that the way that there is, like, you know, within the, you know, the ATR versus Wicca versus, right, that kind of thing. I hope I answered that.
You did, and you answered it very well, because that's, you know, there is that pressure where I feel like it's not just twofold. Sometimes it's threefold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just share in my experience, one thing I find so interesting is I really haven't had that experience in Wiccan spaces or in spaces that are predominantly white. If I say I'm Wiccan, there's very little like question marks about that. If anything, there's sort of an excitement or maybe even a fascination of like, oh wow, oh my goodness, how wonderful, we have someone who is of a different background than we typically see in these environments. And there's usually quite a bit of excitement about that. It's when I'm in mostly Black pagan spaces that I get a lot of like raised eyebrows and question marks. Oh, you're Wiccan? And you know, people insisting that, you know, it's just a matter of time before I, you know, initiate into voodoo or learn more about Ifa. And I'm like, that's kind of, you know, like demoralizing a little bit to have people assume that like you lack knowledge or you lack, I get that a lot on like the YouTube comments that because I'm Wiccan, it must be because I don't know enough about African history or about the ATRs in order to adopt them, as opposed to what is the reality, which is I have made a choice at this present moment in my life that works for me, and it just maybe doesn't match what other people think I'm supposed to be doing. So thank you for sharing your experience on that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to add to that, like, I'm super excited to hear that, like, you're not having that experience as much, like, in the, you know, kind of wider spaces of paganism, because I don't think that that is, I feel like that's newer. Right. And so I'd like to believe that, you know, all of the incredible work that witches of color have done over time is starting to come forward in that way. Because I can't tell you how many, you know, times I've shown up to Public Circle and they go, oh, you must work with the Egyptian gods. And I was like, no. Right. Like right. And I live in California. I'm in the Bay Area. Right. And those are the kinds of comments, or being at, I won't name the organization, but being at a really big, you know, Wiccan organization meeting, and they plan the next meeting and saying, oh, what kind of food do you people eat? Well, I mean, chicken and watermelon, I guess. Like, what do you want me to say? Right. Like, what kind of question is that? Oh, do you get into the hot tub? You know, like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, which is why when this book came forward, it was like, oh yeah, right? Oh yeah. And so, I mean, I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like as we evolve, the larger community continues to evolve too. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that a lot of that kind of pushback from some, not all, I'm sure, but some witches of color, and just culturally, you know, to kind of want their own spaces, is because so much of that has happened historically, right? So I'm hopeful that that has continued to and will continue to shift in a way where we can have comfort wherever we show up. I just know that that hasn't always been a thing.
I really enjoyed your book as well. There were parts that hurt my heart. I am a very big ally. I also live two faiths. I have colonial ancestors and I have an indigenous
ancestors. And I'm on the indigenous path right now, trying to embrace that and learn things. So as I read the book, I've always gravitated towards Marie Laveau. And, you know, she was biracial. She had many, many things in her. And I just felt there's parts of the book that I could also relate to and spoke very loudly to me. So I did appreciate the book.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's what I would hope, right? That you know, like, there are some people that will fall in different places, right, on the continuum. And so some of that will resonate more for you, regardless of your kind of ancestral makeup and how you walk in the world, right? Versus some others who don't walk in the world the way that you walk in the world, that aren't in that middle space. And so I'm glad to hear that you were able to get some value from some of the things, even if there was some heart heavy parts, right? Because we know that that's kind of, you know, how that goes, right? But I'm glad to hear that.
And I when you were talking about when we're talking about well, I live in Texas, so that's probably all I have to say to you for you to know what I probably have to go through. um, coming into and be coming into Wicca, and it was only white spaces, and always being the only person of color in that space. And I shouldn't say person of color, because then there are quite a few brown people here. And so but black people, a black person. And so, and then when I was outside of there, if I told someone else, they would look at me and say, what? You know, the only people that I know that are Wiccan was fat white girls with red hair. You know, and so I'm like, what? And so it was just always craziness, you know. And so and then I did try to well, I read the book The Altar of My Soul. And so then I thought, oh, you know, let me look at this, because this would probably be here in San Antonio. And so then I looked up Santeria. And so then I thought, oh, now this kind of feels good to me. But then you know, I'd go to a misa, and instead of someone caring to write my name down, they put Negrita. And I'm like, you know what, that doesn't feel good to me. And so, you know, that's not cool. And so, and that didn't feel, and so you end up feeling like, no, you know what, I'm just going to be an eclectic witch. And I'm going to find my way in all the different things that I want to, with, you know, with Wicca, with an ATR, because I did do a lot, and I almost initiated to the very end. And then something happened and I didn't. But, you know, I'm like, do that. And if I want to go and study hoodoo, I can do that, or if whatever I want to do. And I'm just going to stay. And I've had you know, I've been in a coven before, you know, a regular Wiccan coven, and then and also a Gardnerian. And so, and in the Gardnerian, we practice skyclad. And so, you know, it was just, I've done a lot of different things before. And so I just felt like, no, I can be an eclectic witch on my own, and I can do my own thing. And so that's what I've just been doing for the past couple of years. And that actually feels good to me, until I decided to be in this coven. But it feels good to me. I decided I'd try coming again, but hey, I'm going to do it my way on this way, you know? So, but I've really enjoyed hearing your story and hearing what you're saying. And I've resonated with a lot of stuff that you said. So thank you. And I can't wait until you're on the podcast. So keep that in mind. I'm waiting for that. Okay, girl.
Nice. I just thank you for sharing your story. I can relate to so much of it. I just want to, and so I never went down the Gardnerian path, but I did dedicate. I think I dedicated, didn't initiate, right? Like the step before, to Nerugd Coven out here. And they also practice skyclad. And that was real new for me. And so yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to have that plethora of experiences that you are bringing forward, because then it's almost like you can craft what feels right, heart right for you, right? And so I have a lot of respect for that. So yeah, I love that. I love that part of your story, and you being like, okay, yeah, no, oh, this works, but not that. Okay, not that, right? And then figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Cynthia. And I think that really kind of, in a lot of ways, makes sense. Like as there may be frustration that comes from kind of navigating this path in this way. I was talking to someone kind of recently about the difference between spirituality and religion.
Mm.
And paganism is a spirituality. It's there may be religions that fall within the pagan umbrella. Folks have come together and decided, well, we're going to follow certain rules and practice certain rituals at these times, etc., etc. But the umbrella of paganism for me is the spiritual practice. And I think that's the difference between a spiritual practice and a religion, which is that you have that room to forge relationships with the energies around you on your own. And just like the relationships that you have in your real life, right? Like your relationship with your mom is not the same as like your sibling's relationship with your mom, or your mom's best friend's relationship with your mom. Same energy, but we're all going to have different relationships with that energy. And I feel like religion doesn't really foster those different relationships. It kind of says, here, have this relationship and this is what it should look like. But spirituality really says, no, just recognize that there's a relationship to be had and then foster that for yourself. And so as chaotic as it might be, as frustrating as it might be, in many ways I feel like that is kind of the point. Finding your own way is really the point of spirituality. Whereas religion is more of being given a way to follow. Spirituality is really about finding your own, and there are definitely, ups and downs to going on any journey on your own. But I think what a lot of people would say at the end is how rewarding it is to go on that journey on your own, because you learn in a way that you never could if it was just being kind of spoon fed to you. And you explore things and go down little pathways and things that you never would if someone was saying, no, you must stay on this path and you can't deviate and you can't, take a 10-year detour through Wicca or, whatever the case may be. But spirituality does, paganism does. And so that is maybe something to consider for folks who maybe are watching this and thinking about paganism or what have you, that it really is more of a personal journey, which means you're going to have independent work to do. And, you got to ask yourself if you're up for the challenge. Are you up for the work, to do that? So I want to make sure that we respect Crystal's time and everyone's time this evening. So I want to make sure if anybody has any final thoughts or questions, now is the time to share them before we wrap up.
I just wanted to say really quick, I also appreciated there was a male perspective in here, because I had to double back. I was like, husband, father, it's a man in the room? Okay. Very much so appreciated. So yeah, I also really appreciated Heart of My Heart, where you talked about eclecticism. Again, it was just something that I really resonated with. It was on page 98. Eclecticism is how we are trained to survive in this country, and something that has been engraved in the psyche of minorities is one of the most important survival techniques to have. I appreciate that so very, very much. It affirms the path that we're on. And again, with Cynthia going on with her story, as far as like, I'll take a little bit from here. It really is something that we are trained to do. Thinking about like making soul food. You take a pinch of salt here, you take a pinch of this here, you add a pinch of butter here. It is about the mixing to make the dish that again makes the meal that is enjoyed by said people. It's an enmeshing process, and I just really appreciated your take on it.
I love that. Thank you. I just wanted to add, I don't think it's still, I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No, go right ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I don't think it's still available, but I will check. And if it is, I will email it to you and you can distribute it. Those books came out. So Shades of Faith and Shades of Ritual. And then I did the on, oh my goodness, I can't even remember the name of the site. But anyway, it's a big spiritual religious site thing. And I did Daughters of Eve, and I did that blog that was very specific, talking about the intersection of pagan practice and Blackness, and worked to get other Black people to write as well. And a lot of the blogs in that time was around my evolution. And some of the things like you're pointing out in that piece of, like really coming to terms with like, wait a minute, like this is why this one path didn't feel right to me in this way, because we're used to being able to navigate and, take what we need for survival and then make it into something, right? Like that's like a kind of ancestral, generational kind of way of being. And then, in Wicca, they were like, no, you have to do it this way. You got to turn this way when you call in the quarter. And you can't say this word, but you can say that word. Like, oh, don't go Widdershins. And I was like, right? And right? I needed more flexibility in that. And so anyway, if it's still online, I think they've archived the Daughters of Eve blog. But if it's still online and I can find it, I will send you a link that you can distribute. And there's some other people that wrote for that as well. And that's where I started the 30-day Real Black History thing that I did, because someone made a stupid comment to me and about slavery. And so being the person that I am, I was like, oh, is that a challenge? So then I started the 30-day Real Black History, and I did it on Daughters of Eve, like very specific, so that it got to pagan communities that were watching. And I literally would post, I would post real facts and information and cultural things about Black people for 30 days. And it wasn't during Black History Month, because that's just not long enough. So it was in June and went into July. And I did that for, I think, about 5 years. And so, right, like, so kind of like the Shades of Faith and Shades of Ritual kind of kicked off like that next piece of like, okay, so we need to carve out space. And then it kind of evolved into some other things. And then into the book about racism in the pagan community, which is also an anthology. So anyway, if I can find that link, I will send it, because,
Yes, please do. I will definitely share it. Book club members, that will be posted in the book club discussion thread in the Coven community, because you can upload files there. So I will upload those files there, and you guys will be able to access it and download it for yourselves. So thank you so much, Crystal, for that. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, this evening for us over here on the East Coast. And thank you so much for your insight and for your writing and for putting this anthology together. I think we all enjoyed it, but even more so, we learned something from it and took away some important thoughts, considerations as we go on our own respective paths as pagans. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. And yeah, I would love to continue this conversation. If you would consider being a guest co-host on my podcast, I will certainly email you the details, and because we're filming for season 3, and you'll see a lot of these faces in the chat that day because they tend to tune in to the live behind the scenes for all the good juicy stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely do that because I would love to talk to you more. It's so wonderful having a voice like yours in the community. So thank you for being here and all that you do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me crash the party. Like I saw my friend Matt
anytime.
Aron was like, oh, he tagged me. And I was like, yo, dope, I want to go. Right. So thanks for letting me show up and just see your amazing faces. And I'm really appreciative. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of the evening. Thank you for being with us. Blessed be.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right. Thank you, guys. That was exciting. Thank you all for being here for this super extra fun session of the book club, the September meeting. We won't be going into breakout rooms. That was our breakout room for the evening. Usually I say what happens in breakout rooms stays in breakout rooms, but feel free to tell people about what a great time you had talking to Crystal and letting them know that if they tune into this replay on YouTube, they will also get to see our time with Crystal. So that was super cool. She reached out to me and was like, can I come? And I was like, yes, of course. Oh my gosh, for sure. So keep your eyes peeled. We may be hearing more from Crystal for season 3 of the Better Witch podcast, which would be super, super cool. Next month's book, I think Betty already has it queued up, is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This book is like, I guess I'll call it like a cult classic or something like that. But if you ever ask people, you know, what should you read for herbalism? What's a good herbalism book? Most of the time, they're going to include this book on their list. This book has definitely become what many considered one of the most important books in recent days on herbalism because it is an exploration of indigenous medicine specifically. And a critique, I guess, or a look at Western medicine, Western approaches of how to deal with the land and things like that, versus the indigenous way of looking at things. Even talk about things like when we call people like Indian givers and things like that, where some of this ideology, like where these terms even come from. One of the really cool things in the book that I have read already is about the concept of giving in indigenous communities, what a gift actually is, and how it came to be that we use the term Indian giver. It's totally racist that we use the term Indian giver to refer to somebody who wants to take something back, and like how that all came to be. So this is not an herbalism book like, you know, Cunningham's Encyclopedia or anything like that. It's not like a how to work with the herbs. It's really more an exploration of someone's learning through an indigenous lens of what it means to connect to the plants, connect to nature, and stuff like that. It's definitely a much thicker read than Shades of Faith. So we've got a few more days left in the month of September. So if you're already done with Shades of Faith, you might want to get a head start on Braiding Sweetgrass. And we do have copies in the shop, of course. And I want to remind you, I'll put back up on the screen for a second. The graphic for the episode, because down at the bottom is the September secret code class, which will give you 15% off of anything in the shop and all classes in the online portal. So if you wanted to get your copy of the book from the shop, remember to use your code so you get a discount. And I think someone in the chat was asking who the author is. The author is Robin Wall Kimmerer, Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer. I think Betty is holding it up if you're able to see her screen. All right. Any
Is that
comments or
two,
questions before I wrap this up?
is the last name, 2 words?
So it's Robin. The middle name is Wall, and the last name is Kimmerer, Kimmerer. So it's
And
just
that's
one.
WALL?
Yep. Yep. But if you Google braiding sweetgrass, it will come up. It's pretty much, the only book with that title that's going to come up for you. It's pretty popular, and you can find it in the shop as well.
Just wanted to show my little show and tell, Allie.
Oh, yes,
My-
yes. What are we showing
For my
telling?
beading class, I've been going to an indigenous center.
Are those beads on the end?
Uh-huh. You know the tiny
Oh,
little
wow.
seed beads?
Yeah. Wow.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? I just love it.
Yes. Did
My
you
little-
make it?
Pretty.
Did you make it?
I didn't make the hat. I beaded it.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful. You great work.
I love
think
all
it
the
needs
purple
a band,
seeds.
though. Don't you think it needs a band?
I agree.
Something. I just think it needs a little something else.
I agree. A little more beading. A beaded band would be really cute.
I was thinking like a rope beaded and then
Yeah.
hanging down the back.
Oh, that would be super cool.
Yeah. So,
You could
and I
maybe even
thank
make it a
you, Edie
tie.
and Allie. I thank you because you're the one that keeps pushing me. Get out there, meet my people. So I go to the
Get out
center once
there.
a week.
Yes, I love
And
that.
I'm going
I
to a
love that you're
powwow
doing
on
that.
Saturday. So I'm very happy about that too.
Yay. I love that. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think it makes a huge difference for all of us to go beyond. We talked a little bit about what some of the benefits are to being solitary and being able to create a practice that is crafted for yourself. But
Mhm.
like Crystal said, having community, I think really is important.
Yeah.
The world, as cool as witching has become, it is still not necessarily the most welcoming world to people who are quote unquote a little different. And even our closest communities, our own families, our friends, our neighbors might look at us like we're weird or even like we're dangerous or, have
I
negative
keep
things
being
to say
asked,
about
when am
us.
I going to come back to Christianity?
Wow.
And I'm like, I've been there. I was there.
Been there,
I
done
moved
that,
on.
right? Yeah. And even and that too, like when it's still very much a Christian world. This country is, supposedly a very Christian country. And so just being anything different is going to get you at best some funny looks, but at worst, like you pointed out at the festival, someone with a loudspeaker yelling about how you're the devil or things like that. And having other witches that in real life really helps to be able to stand up to those moments, especially
We
when they're
all
coming from
rallied.
people that you
We
care
all
about.
rallied, all of us. Like it was like we
Yeah.
were all making noise to distract him, and then the police were called, like, get him out of here. And then we're like,
Yeah.
it's to the good union of all of us saying, we're here for peace and love.
Yeah.
We're not here to harm anybody. Like,
Right.
go somewhere else.
Yeah. And when it's just you, that is so hard. But when you have others who are like you, even if they're not exactly like you, maybe if they're a witch of a different tradition, of a different mix, of a different background or whatever, just having other witches, other pagans that will get you, even if you're only connecting with them once a week at the center or once a month in virtual meetings or whatever. I know I always feel really good after these meetings, because it just is really nice to have people that I can talk to about these things, because my own friends are amazing. They're super supportive, but they don't want to talk about, they don't want to read a witchy book every month and talk about it. And I totally respect that that's not what they are interested in. But it's also wonderful for me that I'm not by myself and that I can find folks that want to talk about the things that I find interesting. So finding community is really important. So I'm really happy to hear that you're finding a local community that can connect you to your ancestry, but also just be like people.
And I
to hang
have a
out
bunch of business cards from the festival, and I'm going to be looking them all up because they're all in
Yeah.
Ontario.
Yes, follow everybody because that's where your witchy siblings will be, checking out those pages too. So that's awesome. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have any other show and tell? Not today. All right. So next month we are reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. We will be meeting on the fourth Monday at 7 p.m. I want to say it's October 23rd, I believe. Yes, October 23rd. And we will have a typical meeting as far as I know for that one. So if you are inspired to engage in any rituals, make some indigenous medicine. I was just making my fire cider earlier today. So if you are inspired to do any of that, make sure to bring it for show and tell next month.
Will you
And
be doing anything live on the 29th, Allie? High tea or anything like that on the 29th?
I don't think so. Nope. I went for, I haven't been doing full moon high teas for a while because I'm not smoking. So I'm no longer on that rotation. But I talked about that in
Just
my
the
live.
brownies.
Yeah. So last night I went live and enjoyed some cannabis brownies and tea. And in that live, I talked about how I'm doing the high tea lives on YouTube. I'm basically just doing them when I feel like it. So I don't expect to be doing anything on the 29th necessarily, no. But keep your notifications on in case I do.
I have to figure out how to get those notifications on my thing to know when you go live. Because the times that I was on when you were live, it was only by accident because I happened to be on my phone and
Yeah.
found out that it flashed on that you were live, or you were going to be live in 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I can't get it, my phone doesn't notify me when you go live.
Yeah, so on YouTube, the notifications are twofold. You want to subscribe to the channel, but you also want to
Yes.
click the bell button. And to the right of the bell button is a little drop-down menu that asks you to specify whether or not you want to be notified all the time, if you want to be
Okay.
notified just sometimes. So click that drop-down button next to the bell to make sure that your YouTube is set the way you want for my channel and that it's notifying you about everything. And then off of YouTube, you also want to check your phone or your device's settings. So you might turn your notifications on YouTube, but if your device is set up to not show certain notifications, then it won't. So for that, you're going to want to go into your settings and check your notifications for the YouTube app. And just make sure you
Okay.
tell your device that you want to see all your YouTube notifications.
I didn't know there was another drop down by the bell. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
can specify. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. All right, guys, I think that is everything. I want to thank you all for being here for this September meeting of the book club. And I hope to see you all in between the times in the discussion group on the Coven community. That is the best place to talk about the books in between meetings. That's also where I'll post anything that Crystal might be sending along. So if you're curious about those articles and things that she's sharing, that's where I'll be posting those. And that's just a great place to chat about the books in between our meetings. But otherwise, I will see you guys at the next one, fourth Monday in October, which is the 23rd at 7 o'clock to talk about Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. So thank
Good
you
night,
guys. It was so great to
everyone.
see
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good
Thanks for the
night.
platform,
Blessed
Bye,
Allie.
y'all.
be.
Bye.
Blessed
Blessed be.
be.